Hi there, welcome to another episode of M&A Stories brought to you by Fifth Chrome Business Insights. My name is Anirvan Sen. I'm going to be your host today.
Hi there, I'm Marcella Hall. I'll be your co-host today.
We've got a special guest who's led more than 30 years in various executive positions in the health tech and life sciences industry, and is also been quite active in the space of M&A and fundraising. His name is Olivier Jarry, and he's lived in a number of countries, but right now he's based out of New York. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Olivier Jarry. Welcome, Olivier. It's so good to see you after a couple of years. How's it going in your part of the world?
It's doing well. We are in New York and we start enjoying life again a little bit, hopefully increasingly in the next few months.
So Olivier, I understand that you were born in France, but from your profile, it looks like you moved around a lot and you lived in and worked in a variety of different countries. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about that journey and how you landed in M&A and kind of the different places that your career has taken you.
Sure. So shortly, I'm this kind of person that always thinks that the grass might be greener on the other side, or at least we should check. France is very centralized. I was born in southern France, but you study typically in Paris and you start working in Paris. From there, I wanted to work in other countries and see something different. I started with Accenture, mostly on the industrial side. And we had, at the time, Accenture was Andersen Consulting, and we had the other Andersen auditors. And they had nicer suits than we had, and they seemed to do something exciting with billions of dollars. And I wanted to know what M&A was. And interestingly, being close to this arm of a company, this gave opportunities to both manage pre-acquisition with them and lawyers and tax specialists and post-acquisition integration. So this I started around the mid-80s and I never left it.
Awesome. And then you also lived in a variety of different countries. Can you share some of those highlights of the different places you lived in?
Yeah. Same thing. I think it's good to challenge oneself and see different cultures and work in different environments. I was blessed that working with Danone, working with Novartis, they wouldn't hesitate to move me around. And then as an exec, you have to visit your global locations. But especially with Novartis, they would really make bets on people. And I was in charge of the southern part of Latin America, then the entire Latin America for one division, then starting a new business in India to improve access to medicines for profit, which was extremely rewarding on a personal standpoint. And I continue as a consultant actually in this area because there are ways actually that you can improve health of millions of people. And it's not extremely difficult. You just need to forget everything that you know in big pharma and do things differently. Except compliance, you need to be doing the same. And then did acquisitions and alliances in China, Japan, and so on. It's great. The only issue then is you have to switch your mind. So you say, okay, now the person I have in front of me now is Swedish. She's not going to react like a Japanese. So maybe I can behave a bit differently.
Nice. Thank you also for calling that out. I know Anirban and I are often talking about how to approach things from a culture perspective and not just the culture, of that country, but also the organizational culture that you're dealing with as well as you're, progressing forward with different deals.
Yeah, interestingly, things become so much more international. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I had a big M&A actually in the alliance in Japan. And I was asking the CEO, I said, I'm a bit harsh with your employees, right? Because I'm used to Americans and Europeans, and sometimes I may be a little bit too direct. He said, no, they have to learn how to work with Americans. I say, okay, all right. And now I'm working with Japanese and Japanese team, which is fantastic. And I don't see a difference. I mean, they react the way we do. They use the same acronyms. They just don't speak about baseball, but the rest is the same.
I thought baseball was quite big in Japan.
It's actually big in Japan. That's a bad example. Let's say they don't speak of cricket.
Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely, yeah. Olivier, one question from my side, which is in the health tech or the pharmaceutical and life sciences space, would you see the place of M&A as a strategy?
So the very simplistic answer is you do M&A to access technology or customers. We saw a lot of customer or reduce our taxes in some cases and do a an inversion acquisition in Ireland or something. So that happens as well. But if you look at the customer side, most of the big firms, big pharma firms now have done it, and they have a global footprint, and they don't really need to acquire customers, but they absolutely need to acquire technology. As you see everywhere, the productivity of internal R&D teams has been declining. You see all these exciting startups everywhere in the world now. It's not anymore only Silicon Valley or Cambridge, Cambridge UK or Cambridge US, or these kind of places, but now it's Indianapolis and it's Mexico, and it's so there is innovation everywhere, and pharma is here to find what is useful to them.
Right. So diving a bit deeper in the pharma world, what are some of the pieces regarding M&A which tends to be different from M&A in other industries, whether it's regulatory, whether it's startup scale-ups or experiments? What are some of the differences?
So the differences are evolving, which makes the answer a bit more difficult. Times ago, pharma and medical devices, I put them in the same box, would communicate with universities and find, hey, Stanford University, you have something really exciting here. We would love to develop it. How much is it? It's about $1 million. Oh, great. That's not too expensive. And this was super early stage. And universities in particular have evolved a lot, and they are aware of their value and much more demanding. And startups, which may or may not be spin-off from universities or people that have just great ideas, also know the value of what they can propose and have been evolving. So coming from very large companies, there are different parameters. One of them is they probably invest less and less in very early stage. And the reason is they don't want to be dispersed. They still have limited teams. They are not in the philosophy of I'm buying 100 and 10 will work. They want to be more focused. And they are, let's say, they focus on neurology and this type of neurology, siRNA, or they focus on cancer, but cancer vaccines. So they try to look at narrower spaces, and they try to de-risk as well, or wait that it is de-risked. So I used to say, this big pharma is going to pay $200 million in 2 years rather than $10 million now. But it's deliberate. It's what they want to do to make sure that somebody else has done the work, the thing has crashed, not crashed. Oh, it has not crashed. Actually, it's interesting. It's time to go now. We also used to say and I'm coming from the biotech side as well, if you are before essentially the end of phase 1 or 1-2A, meaning you have proven safety, you may have proven efficacy, you are in humans. Before that, you knock at many doors, and I've spent my time knocking at many doors for the early stage biotech. Once you pass that stage, they knock at your door. You go to conferences, and they used to give you a business card. Now nobody gives a business card to nobody anymore, but they used to say, hey, I'm working at company X and very interested. Can we speak? Are you open for licensing and these kind of things? So there is this kind of big kind of deadline or milestone. Another component that I will not be very politically correct speaking about is kind of fear of missing out, FOMO. There are big trends, at least in my opinion, such as PD-1, such as CAR-T, very great technologies, but companies that didn't have one want one, and some of them purchased number 14 or 15, and is it good enough? I don't know, or is it really what they needed? But it's kind of, everybody's doing it, I need to have the same. If not, I'm missing something and I would be fired. So not sure if it is the right one, but let's buy one. So there is a little bit in my taste, and maybe I'm wrong, but too much of this FOMO effect in many acquisitions that keep interest on things that should have lower value.
So you mentioned Piggy One. What is that? I'm sure some of our listeners would like to hear about what's Piggy One.
So PD-1 is mainly two brands today, Keytruda and Opdivo from Merck and BMS. Keytruda is the product that saved Jimmy Carter, if I remember well. He said, oh, I received this drug and now I'm cancer-free. So it's a generation of drugs for cancer, what we call immunotherapy. Essentially, they harness your immune system to help you fight cancer. started to appear with Yervoy by BMS in 2011 or 12, it was approved, and is now a standard of care. PD-1 is a receptor on cancer cells that is addressed by these drugs. But where I see an issue is that everybody wants a PD-1, and I'm not sure if they have all the same value.
Gotcha. This is very insightful.
So we've seen there's been, a number of different transactions in the life sciences, pharmaceuticals, biotech, all of that in that space. And you've been, directly involved in a number of those. We also have seen studies showing that, M&As struggle to create value. So I'm curious if you can comment on that and, your perspective on why that may be, anything that you may have seen or observed, any reflections?
Yeah, and there are different factors to create value. One of them is, did you have a chance starting with to create value? In other words, was this acquisition overpaid and nobody could create additional value? It was just overpaid, so you can only reduce value from there. And there are still cases where the CEO is enamored with something and say, okay, everybody tells me 5 billion, I want it, I'm going to put 7 billion because I know better than anybody else. And that I'm saying that a little bit crudely, but there are probably a number of acquisitions that are overpaid for this reason and do not deliver value. That's really, and this is obviously much beyond life sciences. So that would be reason number one. I wouldn't, people say 70–80% of acquisitions don't deliver according to a promise. I don't know if this is half of it or not. So there might be a McKinsey analysis on this, but it's definitely a large part. The rest is much more mechanical. When I say that, I say applying a process, a rigorous process to identify and deliver value. You have to identify value before you do the acquisition, even if you don't do it. So everything I've been seeing successful, during the entire due diligence process, you create your plan for integration, and this drives the value as well. Say, oh my God, actually I will have to fire half of the people and close half of the plants and rehire, and wow, this is reducing the value I can pay. So it's not only a work that prepares the integration for you, it's also a work that helps with the valuation actually of this specific asset. So very important to plan in advance. And in the next minutes that we have together, I'm probably going to repeat it because it's a absolutely essential condition for success. Now you've done it, you make the acquisition, you have a right plan and you paid the right price. How do you move forward? And you enter this integration phase. How do you do it? If you put a different team in place, you already put a few points toward failure. Because these people say, oh yeah, no, that's exciting, that's great. What was the strategy? Please remind me why we purchased that thing. Oh yeah, okay, now I get it. Okay, that's for this technology. Now, is there any plan for moving forward? Oh, there is a plan, great. I don't understand it. Actually, I don't agree. I think the strength of the brand is different and I don't agree with this plan. I'm going to do my own plan. And this kind of thing. So having a different team is a perfect motive for failure. Having the same team is actually a good reason to succeed, or a good way to succeed. But even this way, you need to execute the plan, be flexible, adapt. Things will have changed. People, I mean, you still discover things after the due diligence, obviously. So you will have to continue adapting.
Thank you. That's actually a great segue into the next question I was going to tee up around, where have you seen a lot of value creation achieved and what enabled that? And you already started talking about have a plan and, be flexible and all that. Anything else you would add to that? Or is there a specific example you can share with us where you saw a lot of value creation achieved?
Yeah. So it comes back to why did you purchase something? In my universe, it's mostly technology and commercial. If you acquire something for the technology, is it a one-time technology? You just purchase a patent, you give them to your team, and it's done. Your team is going to exploit them. This was just a blocker in the process, but now you remove a blocker and your team delivers. is it this case and it's relatively, we've quote, easy, or it's a technology that nobody understands except the team that created it? So yeah, the patents are here, but I need to keep that team. I need to keep them motivated. And this is why you see these acquisitions that have a kind of a skunk works team somewhere away from the headquarters, so that they continue working and be creative without being disturbed by the bureaucracy of a big company. So that's a kind of a bifurcation of the technical side. On the commercial side, usually it's relatively pragmatic. I mean, salespeople, they want to make their numbers, they want to go to new customers. We are going to put the two lists of customers together, and now we have double sales. Yeah, maybe to some extent, as long as the antitrust have let you move that far, but that's fine. But still, you find that the selling style may be very different, and the teams actually don't mesh up so well together. More importantly, and we see that a lot in consumer goods, when you have a brand of beer purchasing another brand of beer, as a salesperson, you have been poo-pooing the other brand forever. Oh, these guys, yeah, what they what they are selling is dirty water or whatever. And then suddenly you are in charge of selling this dirty water to the same client. Actually, it's not that bad. So it seems anecdotal, but it's actually very important. I mean, once you have this portfolio coming together, maybe it's not as extreme as my beer example, but you have to sell stuff that you say, no, this is not effective, this is not important, this is not a big brand, this is going nowhere. And then suddenly you have to do it. So these are a little bit the stories once you have to integrate this technology and this commercial aspects.
One of the aspects that you just talked about, or let's say acquiring a company for the product and then literally firing off the management, firing off the sales organization, firing off pretty much everybody, just take the patents or the patent and the technology, right? You and I, we both know that it's not as easy as it sounds. But for our listeners and viewers, would you like to give a perspective that even though you may get the technology and the patent, that you would still need certain kinds of people to still come with that business?
So I'll come to an explanation that I wanted to keep for later, but I can't. Thank you for the question. The best learning I ever had on this topic is from the business school IMD in Lausanne, Switzerland. And they have, or at least professors have, a methodology by which they guide you to plan for integration, first by function. And within a function, you have a 2x2 matrix of how fast you want to go and how deep you want to go. And it will be different for every company. So you may look at the methodology for commercial integration. Do you want to run the two commercial teams in parallel? You want them to keep competing. They were great at competing, doing a great job, and we developed the two companies. Why would you merge the selling team and 1 + 1 = 1.3? You want 1 + 1 at least 2, if not 3. So you may actually decide that you go very slowly and very superficially in terms of integration. Maybe you put the same KPIs or consolidate the numbers, but you don't go very deep. In some of the areas, you may want to go fast and deep, and you say, okay, technology, I need this right now to compete with my main competitor. So sorry, I'm not going to let you develop the next generation. I just cannot afford it. I need it right now. So you are going to redesign your next generation of product, let's say air conditioning, so that it integrates the new technology. So it's right now, scramble, everybody, all hands on deck, and we need to do that. So I could go forever, but you imagine that all the variants of it, I can go slow and deep. I'm going to build that. So I enter a new segment of research, R&D. I cannot brutalize these scientists because they would leave, but I will feed them so that they come with great ideas over time. You can go fast and superficial. I just need to consolidate the numbers, show it to my board, Sarbanes-Oxley shareholders, and it's done. But I need to consolidate numbers right now, and so on and so forth. The other interesting piece of this approach or methodology is that the professors, and it's so true, are saying you cannot just stay in one quadrant forever, especially the quadrant fast and deep. It's just exhausting. So if you need to boost this technology into your next gen products, air conditioning, right now, fine. But you have people scrambling for 6 months, do it, put the product on the market, and then they need to slow down, just humanly. So you are going to navigate in this quadrant from fast and furious and fast and deep to, okay, now I'm going to go slow and deep, because the following generation I can take my time and do it better and slower, and so on. So even this variation of speed in the 2x2 matrix is important.
That's great to hear. I like hearing about that, 2x2 speed and depth of the integration. I'm curious to know if that 2x2 matrix is something that you developed in-house, or it's a standard within the life sciences industry. Is there a template that can be shared, maybe?
So this is all IMD, M&A Lausanne business school. So either it is on their website, and I hope I didn't I didn't reveal something secret. We were hundreds of people going through the same training, but this is probably published, and it's available to anyone, and it's true for any industry. I was there when I was in the pharma industry, but it's true for everybody.
No, I think that's a great example. In fact, these are the kind of insights we try to draw out from these sessions, because this is really sort of, you start talking about when the rubber meets the road. These are the kind of tools and techniques that people use. Now, literally looking at that example, what are some of the challenges people face with respect to, translating the pre-deal to a post-deal? Because literally you talked about, hey, how fast and how deep do you need to go? Is that a discussion that takes place pre-deal in a lot of detail and then cascaded to the post-deal? Or is this something that really starts, you're seeing the light of the day in a post-deal stage?
The more you do pre-deal, the better. If you don't do the deal, that will be obviously a sunk cost, and you will have to write it off. But it's so much worth it. So just taking an example, you may find that there are employment contracts in the acquired company that are so different than your company. And if you start merging the two, maybe A is higher here and B lower, and it's the opposite in your company. But if you merge the two, unions and everybody will ask for, I want high and high. And then your company goes to bankruptcy. So how are you going to manage it? If you wait the acquisition and the following day you say to people, I'm not sure about your health benefits, actually, let me think about it. Maybe in 6 months, I'll give you an answer. And you see the guy next door is having much better health benefits. So it's just things you cannot avoid. If you avoid them, you pay it later 10 times.
Yeah, that's a great call out. As much as can be sort of discussed and aligned on the approach in advance, I think is just so helpful. And to your point, if the deal doesn't go forward, yeah, it's a sunk cost. But if it does go forward, then the organizations are so better positioned and able to kind of move forward and share right away. Okay, here's what the new package will look like, and maybe there are some changes, and maybe this is slightly better, this is not as, but at the aggregate, let's look at what it looks like for you, and here's how that impacts you. And certainly something that's always top of mind for employees that are part of the organization being acquired. So I'm glad you called that out.
And if it doesn't go forward, it's almost like somebody didn't do their job. And I'm a little bit brutal here, but you spent a lot of time analyzing this company. Probably the other company has spent a lot of time analyzing you, and also saying, why would I want my lovely employees to be part of this other company? And sometimes a sale doesn't happen because you believe that it's not good for the people that you have grown for the last many years. So somebody didn't do their job. That's one piece. The other piece is probably it's a question of price. But if you did your job, and you say, okay, I will really like to merge these two companies, but I will have to increase benefits, and my labor costs will go from 200 million to 220 million. And I'm happy to do it. I want the best benefits for everybody. And yes, we could improve in my company, but it's 20 million less in the value of the acquisition. And this is a strong argument in your discussion with your party, because it's just one example. But then you'll say, okay, now I have to close 5 plants and relocate manufacturing to Singapore. Yeah, that will be at some point a saving, but initially it will be a cost of $80 million, and bang, you put it in the price. So it gives you so many arguments for negotiation that it has a value in itself.
Extending on that thought process of the theme of pre-deal and post-deal, and you mentioned this early in our conversation about continuity, right? At the same time, the kind of people who are involved in pre-deal, more hunters, more people who source deals, compared to post-deal, who tends to be operational and functional. Let's elaborate. Let's hear your thoughts and opinion on how that continuity should be there.
Yeah, I understand the characterization of the teams that you did, but you need to have operational people pre-deal. But that's the only way to go. One nice acquisition, it was not big, but one nice one, actually a big one as well, but a nice smaller one we did with Danone in the US. I was CFO, but I had somebody from manufacturing, somebody from the technology, had somebody and so on with me. Director level, not the VP or SVP, sometimes the VP in marketing, and because for Danone it was important. And this team would be the one doing the pre-acquisition plan. I mean, people that really have competency to look at these aspects, go to the manufacturing site, identify the issues, the machines to be replaced, the software to be replaced. That's indispensable. You cannot avoid having operational people pre-deal. Now, in life sciences, as a quick illustration, especially what I illustrated, which is early, mid-stage deals, your first contact is the science team. You get them excited with the science. You go to a medical conference and you say, okay, now I'm going to cure this type of cancer because this, and say, wow. So you get the science team excited. The business development team, the one managing the transactions, just follow, because they need to say, oh, hold on, we don't have this in the budget. How can we justify this is a strategy? I need to do my PowerPoint, explain to my boss. So they come up, but they shape it in a way that is helping everybody. But we are still not pre-deal. And then once you start speaking of a deal, then you have the operations come up in the team.
That's really insightful. In fact, it reminds me of an example a few years back where we were involved with a chemicals company in Asia, which had something very similar. So it's, unlike the myth that exists or the perception that exists in the M&A world, that's all deal sourcing guys that go out and hunt. Actually, in many industries, as you pointed out, it is the R&D team, it's the innovation team, it's the science team that goes out and almost scout for deal and then pass it on to the deal teams and the operational teams.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, part of the ideas you were mentioning include stories, good, bad, and ugly. So let me tell you an ugly story of this kind. A scouting company, I won't give any names, just the country, but a scouting company had found just after the Iron Curtain fell in Europe, this fantastic company in Hungary. Fantastic in terms of size, supplying the client base and everything, not so much the technology. So they just acquired it. And I was managing the post-acquisition integration. And I started with everything that I just said. I came with my small IMD matrices and say, okay, don't have it, we're going to create it. And we started to find out that nothing was working this way. So first of all, it was all through translation. There was not one person in that company speaking English at the time. You could speak Russian and sometimes German, but not English. First. Second, one of the first things I do in this case is I take an org chart and say, okay, now let me understand who does what. Say, what do you mean? Okay, I'll give you a template. So this is purchasing, and this is selling, and this is controlling. Just tell me who does what. And you say, oh, okay. And they fill the matrix with titles that are impossible to understand. So there was somebody called external relations. I say, oh, okay, external relations, I don't need to speak with him. I mean, that's kind of PR stuff, whatever. This was one of the most important person in the company, because external meant relations with the government under communist rule. This means everything purchasing and everything selling was going through him. So from the so-called least important person to the most important person to work with. So that was one piece, and then so many other things. We had to improvise a training session to the entire management, the CEO, the entire management, to explain what profit is. So profit is, you have your sales, you have your costs, and it's the difference. And they say, oh yeah, we know that, that's easy. Oh, okay, how is it easy? Everything we do, and we do make to stock and make to order, everything we do, we mark up 7% when we sell back to the government. Say, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so our profit is 7%. And if your costs double, then we double the margin. So this was a different universe. And say, okay, now you're going to compete with all these companies. If your costs increase, your margin reduces. Ah, no, that's not possible. If the cost increase, the margin increases. So these were basic trainings. It was, retrospectively, it was fun. At the moment, it was a bit stressful, but you have to be ready for strange situations, let's say.
I love that example. Thank you for sharing that. Lots of lessons learned, right, from all of that. Olivier, you had mentioned earlier the importance of really creating a compelling vision for the future, where you're talking about, getting folks excited, the R&D folks, the scientists, getting them excited for the future vision of what these two organizations could achieve together. And I loved hearing about that. I'm curious to know, could you share with us a little bit, what are your thoughts on the importance of culture and change management? Sometimes it seems that these pieces might be a little bit overlooked or maybe not given the attention that they deserve. And just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So culture is a big word. And I remember at Accenture, we used to say, we are going to change the culture. So we are going to align the culture with the strategy and this and that. But the culture is here before the strategy, because it's people. And it may actually slow down your strategy. So it's not something that you modulate. You have an IT system here, you have a set of processes, you don't like this process, you change it. You don't like your rental car company, you put another rental car or leasing car company. Culture, you're not just going to say, okay, now we are sexist, we are not going to be sexist anymore. You have to go in the right direction, you have to incentivize people, punish people, whatever, but the culture is a culture, and it takes time to change, or you may have to change people. So in the specific case of acquisitions, the main thing is, what is in it for me? Like in most things, actually, employment, what is in it for me? So the day after the acquisition, people say, oh my God, supposedly it was confidential. Oh my God, I'm going to be fired. So you want some people to, you would want everybody to believe they're not going to be fired, but obviously some are going to be fired. So that's where also your plan is going to help, because you may have to trigger relatively fast the kind of good news for some and bad news for some others management. If you tell everybody, no, nobody will be fired, and then 2 months later you have fired half of the people, you lose credibility. So you just cannot say it. So it's communication that has to be planned for the day of your announcement. And it's not just the CEO saying, this is so great, we are going to make millions more. People don't care what is in it for me and what happens to me. So it's a little bit back to the basics, but it's probably what to keep in mind. So if I turn it positively, for the people who stay, I have better chances to grow. My company was not selling in Eastern Europe, and now we have these opportunities. I would love to sell in Poland and in the Czech Republic. My company was not into this technology, and now we are at the top of the technology. I love it. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to be more marketable. So try to find how people are going to find value for themselves, and sell it to them. Now, I'll tell you another horror story. I won't say the name of the company, but it's a big company. And the CEO was famous after a huge merger to go country by country So they go to Germany, and the CEO says, okay, you are company A, 20 people management here, and company B, 20 people. So, we merge to make savings. So you're out. So that's the way I was told. I was not there, but that's the way I was told. So after 2 or 3 countries, and after going Germany, Italy, and Spain, the next one, France, was terrified. Oh my God, he's coming, and we are half of us is going to be fired. Then somebody in HR probably told the CEO, it's making people uncomfortable, but you put them all in the same room and you say half of you are fired. If I may suggest that you could change that. So it's, oh, okay. So he didn't say it on the spot. He would send an email the next day. So again, that's the way the story is told. True, not true, but even if part of it is true, that's what sometimes CEO do, and it's probably not advisable, or it might be a style, and maybe people know what to expect, and some people may be energized, but maybe it's linked to the culture, to your point, Marcelo.
Very insightful. M&A integration is a complex maneuver, right? And each individual who's been involved in the space have their own tricks and techniques. Would you care to share some of the technology and the tricks and techniques that you end up using for our listeners and viewers?
Sure. I'm an engineer by training, and worse, I'm a French engineer, and even worse, I'm an aerospace French engineer. So I like try and tackling complication and see things in terms of project management. So I was very happily involved in the development of the engine from GE that is under the wings of the Boeing 777, which was an incredibly complicated project. And these are projects actually where you learn a lot, because in aerospace, when you start this kind of technical development, you may not have the technology to make it work. You may say, I hope that within 2 years, somebody can make the blades this way, because with the current technology, they will explode. Which means that in your plan, you need to have contingency that in 2 years, nobody has made the blades not explode. You need to have a plan B, which is probably bad because the blade will be heavier, more expensive or something. And this knowledge of project management is the same you need. It's really exactly the same you need in M&A. You need to develop your project or take a template. Now I need to work on finance and HR and commercial and technology and tax. And before the acquisition, you have your template, you develop your plan. You have points that are still with question marks and possibly contingencies. And then when you start your projects in real life day one, then you start executing. You measure what works, what doesn't work, what is late, what is more expensive, and adjust. So it's really project management. I don't have a better answer.
I think that resonates with a lot of folks, seeing like the relationship, and that, you have all of these, all of these sort of streams going at the same time that you need to manage and care for. What are the dependencies? Where are the interdependencies? Like, once this is completed, then this activity can start, all of that. So that's really resonating. Wanted to just switch gears for a minute and ask you, you had already mentioned IMD is a great resource for the 2x2 matrix that you mentioned earlier. Curious to know if you can share your favorite books or other reference materials that have helped you, influenced you, inspired you along your journey.
So, and I know I should be prepared for that, but frankly, read everything that comes out. You'll find every opinion and the opposite. It's the same area as, or similar to, strategic planning. You'll find all these great articles from the Harvard Business Review that say strategic planning is a big loss of time and strategic planning is essential. So in the M&A space, it's not really one book and you just follow the book. I think it's a lot of past experience. I think the work you do doing these interviews is fantastic because people will keep hearing different ways of doing things. Everyone has their own favorite tools. So yeah, the IMD tool is great for me. The alignment tool, which is another tool from Strategor, which was a strategy group 30 years ago. Essentially what they say is it's essentially alignment. So you need to align your processes, your culture, your strategy, your objectives, your tactics, and everything in one way. Now, things will pull in different ways. The technology may not be there, the culture may not be there, it pulls in different ways, and maybe it will move the entire axis, the entire column to another place. But if you're not aligned, you get into trouble. Now, you are aligned within your company, A, and you bring company B that has a totally different alignment. And then you have to put these two things together. How do you realign them? Do you want to first, do you want to align them? But if you do, you are going to have these two cultures. Do you want to bring the cultures together, keep them separate, but then you'll have all kinds of tensions. A good example that I think at Nirvan we spoke of before, but is the famous Daimler Chrysler merger and demerger a few years later. And there are a number of horror stories that are really worth reading, and I have friends that were parts on each side, mostly the Daimler side, but of this story, where there seems to have been some kind of contempt on each side for the respective culture. All these Americans, all these Germans, and it was part of a failure, I think, of this merger. The technology was interesting on both sides. They started to put the Mercedes engines into some of the brands of Chrysler. That was technically probably okay, commercially probably okay, but the culture side was completely misaligned. So that's another technology, that's another methodology that comes to mind that I like a lot and I used a lot. I think if you are comfortable with some of these tools as a change agent, creating a change, you were speaking, Marcela, about a change management plan. Yeah, what is your audience? What are their feelings today? Where do you want to move these feelings in the future? What are the messages you want to send them? And what are the media for these messages? Is it a town hall? Is it a bulletin every week? I think we have the great example of the integration of Nissan working with Renault. I think Horsten did a very good job, at least in the beginning, before he got into trouble. But he was shown as a wonderful manager who could bring this Japanese and this French culture together, which is probably not easy at all. And with all kinds of town halls, visiting the plants, having weekly bulletins saying, hey, we made progress. This plant now has taken this technology. Honestly, I think it's using the tools you are familiar with as a leader and listening to everything else that has happened in other cases.
I love that we circled back to culture and change management. I love that. I think it's so great to continue thinking on that and the different examples and where things went well and where things just totally fell apart. And then to your point about alignment, right? The two organizations, leaders from the two organizations really need to have that alignment up front and not after the fact, and think through, let's be intentional. Are we going to have, the acquired organization, are they going to adopt our culture? Or are they going to maintain their culture? We want to preserve their culture. There's something special about it and we don't want to change that in any way. Or should these two organizations, are we going to come up with a new culture together and we're going to define that together and we're going to define how we'll actually execute on that together? And I just think spending a lot of time up front to really align on that and have that plan and that path forward can really be helpful, especially, given the examples you shared, where then if there's not alignment, let's discuss it. Why are we not able to align? Like, what's going on here? What's one organization really focused on and what's the other organization really focused on? Like, where is that misalignment? And just spending that time can be so helpful.
Totally, and you're obviously a change management expert. So let me share with you the biggest failure of my life, at least professionally. Being born French, having started to be, my first trip in the US was in 1981. Accenture was obviously American. I was in the French office, but working in Brazil, Hungary, and Germany, and wherever, Canada. And then being part of Danone in the US, a French company in the US, and so on and so forth. I always had in my mind, as since 1981, that the US culture and the French culture would be very complementary. Pragmatism on the American side, typically in companies very good at marketing. I have in mind an integration of on the electrical, mechanical, whatever space, where the American team was so good at marketing. Technology was not there, but marketing was excellent. The French team was excellent at technology, was pretty bad at marketing, and so on and so forth. And I see this complementarity that you put these teams together and this technology and these processes, that will be a winner worldwide. You can squeeze anybody else in any country, and it's very difficult to make it work. So it's probably me. But you see, one case that is very common is the French make a big acquisition in the US. So it's a 10 billion company. They purchase a 4 billion company in the US, and they are shy. They say, oh my God, these are the Americans. They know what they do. We are just a little French. We're not going to impose them the way we do things. So right after the acquisition, it's, you guys, you know what you do. You don't really need advice from us, right? And the CEO say, yeah, no, I would welcome your advice because it's kind of politically correct. And the French say, no, you don't, you know. And CEO says, oh, okay. And then the wall is erected, and then nothing is transparent, and he does his own stuff like before, and you have no idea what's happening, and you have no synergy taking place. So a little bit caricatural, but this happened in the place where I was 3 or 4 times. And then all other kind of issues. It seems that I mean, it seems very difficult to make it work, whereas it should be a marriage in heaven when you see it on paper.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds like a really, really interesting experience. And you said this was in the 80s, or you experienced this a couple of times?
A couple of times. In now in pharma and biotech, that's probably another type of issue. But I was helping French biotech, and they have good ideas, French, Belgian, but especially the French would say, okay, now I have this technology, I'm going to come to the US, I raise $100 million, I find a distributor, I'm done. No, that's not the way it's working. So part of the issue is also expectations, education, understanding the other party, understanding how the system works. The healthcare system in the US is an absolute nightmare of complexity. To the point that in pharma, we never try to educate a non-US person to the US system because it's just impossible. For a consulting firm, I developed a 4 times 3 hours superficial education on the US system, 4 times 3 hours with 3 experts, and we still just scratch the surface. But the point is, when there are huge differences like this, this plays also in integration, and it makes it very difficult.
Olivier, when you're having a good discussion, you don't know where the time flies, right? I was just looking at the clock, and we've already overshot the initially planned. Is there one lesson that you would want our viewers to sort of keep in their mind from you?
Build your dream team. Hopefully you can, and hopefully you will, and keep it pre-acquisition, post-acquisition. I had a dream team, really a dream team twice, and good teams the rest of the time. But you have this dream team where people are excited and they are going to do whatever is needed. In one of these 2 dream teams, I had 2 team members, a man and a woman, wanted to learn from the other and say, that's great, I love what you do, I love your swim lane, how can I learn? And they were so excited that I said, okay, we are just going to exchange jobs. I said, what? So yeah, you do her job and he does whatever. And they learned this way. They helped each other. They were constantly talking and training each other, and they had the best experience in their life, I think. To the point that on the second dream team, I had a gentleman after we say, okay, the integration is done. It was like 6 months integration, something. It's done. Now we are disbanded. You come back to your normal job. He was an operational guy. And he said, no, I'm quitting. I said, why? Say, I had the best time of my life. I don't like my normal job. I'm going to another place where I can have more excitement. So if you have a dream team, keep your team excited, 6 people, 10 people, whatever, through this process. That's an incredible adventure and experience.
Very well said. Lovely way to bring our bring our interview discussion to an end. What is the best way that people can get in touch with you, people who want to continue the conversation?
It's to get in touch with you, and then you route them to me. Otherwise, yeah, that's probably the best way, to be honest.
Brilliant.
Otherwise, via LinkedIn. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, so you can always connect on LinkedIn. But I think that going through your team would be great.
Awesome. Olivier, thank you so much for your time today. It was really great to hear and learn from all of your experiences. You've had so many different experiences. I love that you shared stories with us, about, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of that. You gave us so many examples. So thank you so much for your time. This was awesome.
With pleasure. Be safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you liked what you heard, give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel and all of the podcasts. There are 8 different podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and Google.
And stay safe, stay healthy. Until next time, we'll see you again. Bye-bye.
And if you liked the episode, I'm sure you'll also like our latest new tool. It is a quick assessment scorecard to assess the robustness of your M&A integration design. It just takes less than 5 minutes to answer. It is for free and you get an instantaneous recommendation. So visit maintegrationplan.scoreapp.com and find out for yourself. maintegrationplan.scoreapp.com. Bye bye.